material. So thank you very much, Jasmine. So let's bring Rachel on board. And Rachel's story goes back a little bit longer. We go back a few years, I think, Rachel. So I'll hand it over to you to share your story over there in the United States. Come on board.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Ray. We actually just got back from celebrating my son Simon's 4th birthday. We were camping this weekend. And so I thought I would start my story 4 years ago, because 4 years ago, I was 9 months pregnant at this point, and I would have considered myself to be extremely healthy. And just a few days from now, when my son Simon was born, I lost half of my blood after he was born. And then while recovering from that, about 2 months later, I moved into a house that we did not realize had black mold in it. And at that point in time, now looking back, myself, my daughter, who was 2 at the time, and my newborn started having symptoms at that point, but we didn't recognize that the mold was the problem until quite a bit later. About 6 months after that, my son was diagnosed with a severe rare bleeding disorder, which then explained why I lost half of my blood during childbirth. And so you fast forward a little bit, 2 years ago, we moved out of that house. And while we were living in that house, all different symptoms between the 3 of us, but we all continued to get sick. And then even after moving out of that house, I continued to get worse. Some of my symptoms were pain in my bones. My arms and my legs felt like they weighed 50 pounds. I had facial numbness. I had hives all over my body, just a lot of fatigue. I had a really hard time getting out of bed in the morning. My brain fog was almost debilitating. And we moved out of that house in August of 2020, so about 2 years ago. And I continued to get worse. And similar to Jasmine, I was working with functional doctors, naturopaths, homeopaths. I was using biofeedback machines. I had tried every supplement protocol out there that any doctor had recommended to me, and continued to get worse. And about a little over a year ago, I just got in touch with my organic farmer, who also has the same severe bleeding disorder as my son. And he said, I just want to tell you about this. I used to have a chronic nosebleed several times a month, and I have this right elbow target joint that bleeds all the time. And I've been on these redox molecules for about 6 months now, and I'm not bleeding nearly as much as I used to. And for me, I had at this point, 2.5-year-old, and I'll get to Simon's story in a little bit, but that's all I really needed to hear for me to be willing to try. So I didn't have the typical skepticism after hearing that from my organic farmer, who's been living with this disorder for 60 years. So we got our product, and at that point I was sitting on the wait list of a doctor that I wanted to work with, and I was miserable. I had hives all over my body all the time. My husband was getting the kids out of bed, making breakfast, doing everything around the house, and then he would leave and I would just suffer through the day until he got home. It was pretty bad at that point in time. And I remember getting the ASEA, and on my very first dose, my face went numb, which was a symptom for me. And I was like, okay, I've never taken a supplement that something happens that quickly. And very quickly, I started to detox mold. And I knew that because I knew what I felt like when I lived in that house and after I moved out of that house. And so I got on the phone with Dr. Ray, and he helped me figure out what dose I needed to get to and how slowly I was going to need to move, because I was one of those extremely sensitive people. And I would say for the first 3 weeks, I was in a lot more pain, and I needed to sleep a lot more, and I almost felt like I was in a coma. But around the 1 month mark, the brain fog started to lift, and I started to wake up before my family, and I started making breakfast in the morning, and I started feeling my personality coming back. I was almost numb at that point. And I guess I should say within the first week or two, a lot of the nervous system overload that I was having from the fight or flight of dealing with my son's diagnosis and just being like overwhelmed and triggered, a lot of that lifted pretty quickly for me. But it took about a month before I would say I was on the upswing, and then it's just continued from there. I've been on the molecules now for about a year, and I'm still working heavily through mold detox now with my doctor. So I take a pretty high dose, usually about a half a bottle a day. right now, but I'm hoping at some point to get past the mold and go down to a lower maintenance dose. But I would say my story is almost nothing in comparison to my son, who is now turning 4 in just a couple of days, because he's struggled his entire life. And he was diagnosed at 8 months with his bleeding disorder while living in a moldy house. And we had confirmed that he had been bitten by a tick. He had mitochondrial dysfunction. He had significant gut dysbiosis. We were working with a functional doctor, trying protocols on him as well. Nothing was working. And at some points, he was showing spectrum issues. And when we started on ASEA, we were told by doctors that he was going to be diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder that they couldn't diagnose until he was 6 or 7, but they were pretty sure he was going to have this disorder. And so I, at first I started on the molecules, and once I recognized how much power they had, I very quickly started just using the gel on him. And at this point, we were 2 years into our journey with this bleeding disorder, and very familiar with when he gets a bruise or when he starts bleeding, what that process needs to look like for us. We needed to call our nurse, because at that point I didn't know how to place an IV, and we had to wait for a nurse to come anytime he needed his IV medication to help his bleeding stop. Well, the first time he got a pretty gnarly bruise on his knee and we started putting gel on it, both my husband and I's jaws just dropped to the ground, because we'd never seen anything like it. It was within hours that the bleeding stopped. And that was like I have goosebumps just talking about it right now, because that was just life-changing for us, not having to, just go straight to calling our nurses and figuring out who can come. And then, so we started him on the water pretty quickly after that. And the first thing he got was this giant yeast rash around his mouth. And that was, one of the things that was detox for him. But he had never had a solid stool in his life at that point. And 2 weeks into being on ASEA, he had his first solid stool, and he's had solid stools ever since. We had been monitoring him with GI maps, and just like Jasmine, we ran every blood there was, we ran every test there was, we knew what was going on with him. And so we have a lot of points of comparison. And 3 months into ASEA, our functional doctor was shocked, because we had been for years trying all of his different protocols. None of them were working, and his stool came back significantly better. And so we fast forward, and the osteopath that we were working with that told us that one of the people that told us he would have this connective tissue disorder now sees no issues in his connective tissue. He no longer, when he would run before or walk, I would be on the edge of my seat, just like praying that he would not fall and hurt himself, because he was so flimsy when he would run or walk. And he looks like a completely normal little kid now. He doesn't have any of those connective tissue laxity issues. He doesn't have any diarrhea, hardly ever at all, unless he's sick. And his bleeding is significantly better than it's ever been. And the gel has just been a lifesaver for us. So this product has been a blessing, and I'm so thankful for all of the people who were willing to share it with us, because it has completely changed our family's life. And I obviously now am able to be a mom and homeschool my kids, and share ASEA with other people who are in need, which is also a wonderful blessing.
I never tire of hearing your story, Rachel, and of course most, but it's just astounding, absolutely astounding. Just a few points for the benefit of everyone on the call. One thing, I'll make a disclaimer that ASEA make no claims to treat, cure, or prevent any disease. But of course, they don't need to. Redox signaling molecules does exactly what all of naturopathic, natural healing modalities focus on and believe takes place, and that is they supply the human body with what it needs to heal itself. The creator up there doesn't mind or care what the name of your disease is, but providing the body that gets what it needs, it is more than capable of healing itself. And this absolutely happens to be the deepest, most profound supplemental product that allows the body to do that. Of course, we still need a healthy diet, good nutrition, clean air, hopefully, and clean water. So that is still also primary to the functioning of cells. Just a quick note for everyone's benefit on detoxification, healing crisis processes. You know, you've heard today from Rachel's story, because of the toxic effects of the mold. When the body heals, it needs to clean itself out. And this is why we always suggest drink lots of water when you make use of the ASEA redox, because it is a measure of the product is how powerful it is to allow the body to detoxify. Now, detoxification is not new in natural healing or medicine. We've known about it for thousands of years. And it should occur when you undertake a healthier program, be it fasting, be it herbal, be it acupuncture, or all manner of natural healing systems can induce a healing crisis and detoxification, because that means they're working. So detoxification symptoms are the best side effects you can ever have, because it means it's actually working. This is in complete contrast to side effects from drugs, of course, which are all negative. They're always negative. There's no positive in that. So I just wanted to make that point. Now, everyone, as you can appreciate from what we've heard here, and we've heard 3 stories, Simon and Rachel and Jasmine, and very different stories. The conditions were different, and of course the results nonetheless are very similar. So your results are not dependent on will it work or will it not work. They are dependent on getting enough of the product for long enough. I'm going to repeat that. It's, are you getting enough, and do you get it for long enough to get the results? We always recommend 3 to 4 months before you make a judgment, because we know 90% of people by that point in time are experience the positive benefits that come after those earlier cleansing processes, which, by the way, do not always happen. Many people just start to feel better very quickly, but they do occur occasionally. And so you need 3 to 4 months to assess the benefits of the product. But your healing journey can continue for years. So it's important to be aware of that. And you will know it's working by 3 to 4 months. If not, take more. It's all about getting enough for long enough. The older you are, the sicker you are, the more you may need to initially achieve those great results that you've heard about today. Nonetheless, even sometimes the smaller dose levels affect people very positively, very quickly. So I think another point needs to be made here, and that is with such an amazing product comes an amazing opportunity. I've lost count of the number of times that I've heard people say to me, look, I'm not interested in selling or sharing the product. I'm only interested in getting results. And I say, well, that's perfectly fine. That's what we're all about. But the one thing that I often say to them is, if you get a great result, and you will if you follow the procedures and time, are you going to keep it a secret, or would you like to share that? Of course, being a little bit cynical there, but they get my point. And of course, at that early stage, they may not have that belief that it's going to do what we say, those of us with experience, that it will do. But I've watched many, many times where this is completely flipped, and the person ends up sharing it because they can't contain themselves. You can see the excitement and the enthusiasm with Rachel. You can see it with Jasmine. You know, I've seen some recent posts of Jasmine's on Facebook where proclaiming to the world, you know, and that's wonderful, because that means more people's lives will be changed, more people will therefore benefit from the product. But of course, those individuals sharing it will also benefit, and it will pay for their product. And if you want to go beyond that, the sky is the limit. There is no limit with this company. They need people to help take it around the world by word of mouth, which is exactly the way that we're doing it. Again, for very obvious reasons. You can't put a bottle on a shelf made from salt water and people will buy it. They need to get the stories like we've all heard today that are so convincing that we're worth to invest and therefore use it and then get our results. Value is in the initial perception, but it is eventually in the result. So in the initial perception of a bottle of something made from salt water for $50, that may not be perceived as good value. But once you hear those stories you've heard today, can you imagine for a moment the cost of the medical care for all of those years for Jasmine? Can you imagine for a moment the cost of the medical care for that severe bleeding disordered Simon and what it would have cost in the future ongoingly? That would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, all now substantially curtailed from a $50 bottle of ASEA. And it wouldn't even be that for Simon because he wouldn't be on that level. So it's really quite extraordinary. And once you appreciate that level of value, this is probably not only is it the greatest health product that's ever existed on planet Earth, it's probably the cheapest health product that's ever existed. That does what it does on planet Earth. I think it's timely as we wind this up today to express our gratitude to the likes of Virtus and Tyler Norton, who are the people who had this technology, and a pharmaceutical company offered an awful lot of money to buy it from them. And when they had their suspicions that this would not be made available or become an extraordinarily expensive drug, chose not to go that route, which left a gentleman, way in his retiring gentleman, Virtus, with a dilemma of how do we build a company and take this around the world, which his son Tyler is now doing. So I think we need to express our gratitude to them for the fact that we all are hearing these stories and many on the call have similar results. And for the benefit of the new people here today, all I can say is get on the product. So the person who's invited you to the call, speak to them, get on the product, be consistent, drink plenty of water, give it 3 to 4 months, and you will then know what we know, those of us who use it. I will never not take the product. I did not come in with a health problem. I was a perfectly healthy 61-year-old at the time. I'm 67 in November. I take 6 of these cups every single day. I use the gel 3 to 4 times every day, and I will never stop because I'm in serious maintain my health mode and prevention mode, because all dis-ease conditions get worse with age. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here and for your time. It's, I think, time to wind this up now and have a great day. So from Phuket, Thailand at 6:40 a.m. in the morning, thank you for being with me, and we'll see you again on another occasion. Thank you all. Thank you, Bart.